Greetings, everyone. Welcome. It's wonderful to be here. We missed you last week. Um, and so, welcome again. And I'm Jan Jeremias. And for more than 35 years, I've been focusing on health and have been weaving health into my own life in a more conscious way. And over the past 2 decades, I've blended my background in research science with a deep love for holistic wellness to support both people and their four-legged companions and living longer, fuller, and more connected lives. Um, my passion is helping people, and I love helping them to see the whole picture of their well-being, realizing that it's a lot more than just the physical. It's a combination of the physical, the mental, and emotional, and then helping them to translate that into like simple, meaningful um, things they can do every day to improve their health and well-being. I'm endlessly inspired by creativity and nourished by connection. And so I'm really so grateful to walk this path along my dear friend and collaborator, Mary Jane McQueen. And together we believe in bringing more kindness into the world, one creative moment, one conscious breath, and one heartfelt conversation at a time. And I think this is so very important, especially these days. So a heartfelt thank you to Mary Jane and to each of and every one of you for showing up with open hearts. This community really shines because of you. And I know I speak for both of us that we're deeply grateful to have you here. Mary Jane, I'll pass it to you.
Thanks, Jan. And yeah, you are more than capable of speaking on both of our behalves because it's certainly true. We are extremely grateful for the wonderful people that are being brought into this beautiful sacred space. And I am Mary Jane, and I am a graphic designer, founder of a creative studio where I help my fellow entrepreneurs um, as well as others to create beautiful graphics that suit their mission and vision for whether it's an event or an actual logo and brand development. I love locking arms with them and helping them bring that to life. And of course, in this space with Jan, I hold what I hope is gentle, intentional conversations. And we create meditative experiences that invite you to slow down, soften, and reconnect with yourself. Because, as Jan was mentioning, Spirit Born Imaginings is a place of presence, compassion, and curiosity, where we have mindfulness, breath, energy awareness, and creative reflection come together to support really self kindness, self nurturing, and inner transformation because here there's nothing for you to achieve or things to do, only an invitation to arrive exactly as you are and in this moment. And to begin, I will offer a poem, just an invitation to listen inward in a sense of what wants to be present for us today. And today's poem is entitled Inhabit Your Bones, and sort of in brackets is a poem about true belonging, and it's by Says Christensen. And it reads: Unpack your bags and plant your trees. Build a hive to house your bees and bed your flowers like slumbering seeds, ready to bloom under moons and suns. Wait the long wait until you doubt what all this waiting is all about, and you decide to finally create within all those things you seek without. Because nowhere does there exist a person, a place, a thing, a gift outside of you that can make you feel like you have roots, like you're real and can take up space and take what you need without the feeling of shame, the feeling of greed. Inhabit yourself, inhabit these bones, inhabit this heart. Inhabit this home inside of you that does not depend upon walls or a door, or a family name, or a mat on the floor that says you are home, that says you belong. Because you always do, and you did all along. So unpack your bags and plant your trees. In every place you find yourself a stranger. In every moment you find yourself a guest in your own life. And you will always find a home in the soft loving of your bones.
Thank you so much, Mary Jane. Um, so, hello, everybody. We welcome you to a seat at my own table. This is an invitation to return to yourself. In a world that teaches us to look outward for permission, this space asks something quieter and braver to listen inward, to trust the voice that has always known, to remember your own worth. Here, belonging is not something to earn, it is something to claim. Together, we will explore what it means to sit in the truth of who we are, to honor the stories that have shaped us, to cultivate a sense of inner ground that does not sway with every opinion or expectation. We will also reflect on the courage it takes to stand in your strength while sharing space with those who see the world differently. In these moments, clarity is born, clarity about your values, your voice, and the shape of your becoming. Difference does not diminish you, it can refine you. A seat at my own table is a practice of self respect, a gesture of welcome to the whole of who you are. It is the art of taking up space gently and fully, without apology and without armor. This is a space for listening, for reflection, and for honest presence, where every journey is honored and every voice has a place. Come as you are, take your seat, let yourself belong.
That was lovely, Jan. I uh, I really loved for when we were talking about having a seat at our own table because sometimes I felt well I can speak for myself. We're so busy in the busy that sometimes we forget that we also need to have that seat at the table. And I really liked when we were talking some of the research and things that we were doing when we were talking about this topic was about creating a home in your body. There's something so warm and comforting in that, and it's often a space we forget because we're so busy caring for others. We forget that we also need that same, and not just need, we deserve to have that same space at the table.
Absolutely. And I think, unlike other, I think about the body is always a great place to begin, like inhabiting your body, actually feeling your body. Um, I think it's the first kind of home we can identify. It's like to me,
Hmm.
I think that um, it's matter, it's dense. And I think that sometimes a lot of the other places where we tend to occupy space, like that's how we relate to them. Like it's our house, the people that we're with. I mean, it's not, it's a group. It's kind of, it's also dense. It's like has substance. And so I think that we know what it feels like to inhabit our body. Um, thank you for the house, little house emoji. You were, I'm sorry, I just broke my thought. I loved it now. It was like all of a sudden, it was like the Wizard of Oz, a little house floated by. It was like, so yeah.
Well, sometimes
But
that's how life feels, isn't it?
oh my gosh, so much so. Um, but I think it's really important to, like you said, inhabit our body. And I think we forget that. I think it's not like it's kind of like we get up, our body does whatever it's going to do. we don't really think about it most of the time, unless obviously it hurts or something is wrong. But, I don't know how much we feel embodied.
Yes.
And I think it's a really great place to kind of begin because I think that if you don't feel at home in your own body, then it's very hard to feel at home anywhere else.
Well, it's true, right? What you're saying, like sometimes, like because life in itself is a journey and there's lots of ebb and flow, constantly shifting, but really it's just about remembering that thing that's really key to both of us about self-compassion with both the ups and the downs, because as life happens, it's true. And I was just thinking, we were saying, like, for me, I mean, one of the things that we're talking about is about appreciating our own uniqueness, because sometimes we get so caught up with the other stuff. And that's one thing I could say in the last couple of years. I already know that I'm like I always say to one of my friends, because she always is like, I'm like, I embrace my weird. I'm okay.
That's right.
My
Exactly.
quirky, weird humor. Okay, it's all right.
That's right. That's right. I love it. But I think the other thing that happens when, to feel embodied and the whole idea of feeling embodied, we live in a culture where we're constantly bombarded with images about how, like, the perfect body and what it's supposed to look like and, appearance and all those other things which are so external, it's like very surface. But that's what we're, from the time we're little, it's like, how do you look? Like that kind of thing becomes very important. And I think we're very used to looking outside of ourselves, um, to see and comparing ourselves with others and not sort of like not being told that our bodies are okay and or that, inhabiting our body is okay. And so we live in a space where, and that some of that is just normal, like childhood, like you go to school and you're different than other people or whatever, even though kids have the ability not to see that kind of stuff, much better than we do. As adults, adults tend to categorize, I think, a lot more than kids do. And I think I shared a graphic with you, Mary Jane, the other day. It was these two little girls in a store that one was dark skinned and the other one was Caucasian. And
Yes.
they were dressed exactly the same. Like they had the same outfit on. And the little girl like yells to her father, "Look, Dad, we're twins." Like not, the whole idea of like them physically appearance wise being like of different ethnicities and different backgrounds didn't really matter, and to her they were the same. And and therefore they belong, like I don't think they had any question of belonging. Like they were just like, oh, okay, we're the same. Like all the things that we oh, Al. Oh goodness. Yeah. But I don't think that they saw that at all, and I once had this conversation with a good friend of mine who lives in an area of New York, and it was one of the first schools. I think it was the first one. I think it was like the first school, one of the first schools in the country that actually had a gender neutral bathroom in a high school.
Cool.
And she talked about how accepting like all the kids were. Like it didn't faze them. The parents didn't like it. Like the parents got upset. But the kids were like, it didn't faze the kids at all.
Hmm.
And I think that, to me, if you want people to belong, first of all, we have to belong to ourselves, which is around what this conversation today is about. We have to learn how to accept ourselves and to cultivate that. But also, I think the only way to, you know, is situations like that where you don't point out, differences as much as you point to, like, you concentrate more on how we're alike. Is that, and the fact that those two girls were like approximately the same age and, you know, They obviously liked the same things, or they were cute. They thought, because they were wearing the same outfit, and they thought like of this, like it was like a little princess outfit or something,
Yes.
so it's like they had that connecting them. Yeah.
Well,
So,
I love that in that picture. I just love too that, yes, the comment, of course, doing it, looked at, we're twins, was awesome. But it was just the thing of note in that picture, other than what they were wearing, same thing is they were both grinning
uh-huh, uh-huh.
from ear to ear, which was just fabulous. It's just because that's right, it's like Becky. Well, it's like anything, right? It's like recognizing ourselves in someone else sometimes and vice versa.
Hmm.
It's very it's it's a very cool thing.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's interesting, because it's like um it's really about this thing having a seat at our own table, right? It's about that thing where we finally stop asking others for permission to live our lives, choosing what feels right for us. And no matter how hard that feels, because sometimes it can be hard. It's not always easy, of course, we know, but it's just, and being patient with ourselves, right? Sometimes I'm not the most patient with myself because I always say I have high expectations of myself, saying standards that I may not put to other people. So it's just about being patient with myself because and recognizing that there are going to be times where, hey, I might fall a bit short or not quite get where I want to be by a certain time, but you know, I always, the timing is as it's meant to be. That's the way I look at it. But sometimes I have to remind myself of that.
Hmm.
I,
One of the things, oh, sorry, Mary Jane, go
no,
ahead.
I was just gonna say I've done a lot of that the last couple of weeks, helping my sister who going, okay, just let it go. It's fine.
Yeah, but I think one of the things you share that it's not always an easy place to be.
Mm,
And I think sometimes standing in our truth or belonging to ourselves um, can be challenging, you know, when we hold different opinions or different thoughts or have different values than someone else. And we're in a group, and that
mm,
group could be a community, it could be uh, a family, it could be, relationships, and that can be a challenging place to be. I mean, I live in a country right now where I feel like, it's very common to stand in a space where people like are very, aren't holding the same beliefs and it's sometimes a very uncomfortable and very overwhelming place to be. But I think it's also a great way to kind of expand and um, to learn more about ourselves, to be able to really reflect on what we value and what we think is important, really who we are. So I think if anything, it makes our feeling of belonging or that feeling of, okay, this is important to me. This is who I am, much stronger in the end. It's not an easy place to stand when you're in it, but I think it does cause us to question and to contemplate some of those things, the big questions, like the big questions of like, where do I fit in? And, and I mean, first, and it cultivates that feeling of fitting in with yourself, of actually, you know, fitting in with you, not having to navigate, every circumstance and feel like you have to be this chameleon of like, okay, I'm with this crowd and this is who I need to be. It doesn't mean you need to be loud about it, but it also doesn't mean that you have to back down and cower at the thought of who you are.
well, that's true. I've definitely had a few experiences of that of of late.
So have I.
Yeah, where, I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, well. you know, there's the expression, I don't know, they was like, well, you do you and I'll do me. Because that's because it's sometimes um it's not to sort of like bypass the feeling of it, but sometimes it's a matter of it's like that sense of letting go because you know nobody's going to ever fully understand another human being. We understand ourselves best if we actually take a moment to just reflect on who we are and what it means to be the person that we are and it's a beautiful thing, but there's sometimes the outside likes to creep in and you kind of like I said, you do you, I'll do me.
Mhm. Mhm. And yeah, and I mean I've been in situations where, I had to kind of monitor the amount of time I spent around people who were really extremely different or led very different lives than I led at certain points in my life. Not feeling comfortable with, I could be around them like kind of in small doses. It was kind of like, okay, I can have a little bit of this, but then I have to like kind of step back and regroup and ground and get back to myself and be around people who are, who value me and I value them. And then I could step back in again. I had the ability to weave back in. And and that's but I think we all need that opportunity, right? We all need that opportunity to kind of get quiet and kind of regroup,
Hmm.
feel embodied, do something that kind of makes us feel um, like acknowledge all the aspects of ourselves,
Yes.
allow them to be there, whether that be like journaling or getting creative, like Mary Jane and I do, that we have in our workshops, like getting outside in nature. I mean, there's so many different opportunities. Um, where you can feel that kind of real steadiness and real groundedness, and
Yeah.
then you're able to, I think, navigate the world from a much better space.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's interesting how we always look at the external, or we often, I shouldn't say always, but we often look at the external, um, because that's for a connection. Because I mean, I guess that's the natural way of being for, we'll say animals in general, including humans. Um, but it's really important too, right, to take time to take a seat at your own table and really um, reflect on those experiences that have made you the person that you are today. Not dwell on them, but just reflect on them. And depending on what they are, as best as we can, to keep moving forward and letting those things go, especially if they involve some sort of trauma, of course, it's not to bypass it. It's literally just to keep moving forward because we are we are our own best company, so to speak, in a sense, because um, I could say we know each other we ourselves best, but sometimes we don't know ourselves that well because we don't take that time to reflect. So it's really key that you were saying, Jen, about journaling and doing little things and just not bypassing the things that might come up, but reflecting on them, but just not dwelling on them. So,
Hmm. And I think, yeah, I agree. And I love what you shared, Mary Jane, because I do think it is really valuable. And I think we do. We spend a lot of time outside ourselves, like trying to belong somewhere,
yes.
um, trying to, you know, fit in, whether it be with a family, a community, a school, um, even like things like networking groups and business things. Um, I was in a networking group for very long, for like over a year. I'm not the biggest networker. It's not like something I going to like networking events and everything. And I tried this one group for like a year. I didn't want to back out too soon because I thought that would tend to be what I wanted to do because I tend not to like them. So I was like, okay, very easy for me not to attend.
Yes.
But I was like very like, okay, just keep going, keep going, keep going. And then I finally realized it just wasn't my like it wasn't my tribe. Like,
Yes.
it just wasn't my tribe. And I just finally was just like, this is just, I'll find another tribe. Like, I'll look around and find another group. And I think sometimes that's hard because we think we have connection or we want connection. It's almost like realizing that you have friends or colleagues that all of a sudden you thought, like, you were like, oh, okay, I'm going to stay with this or I'm going to be with this friend. And then all of a sudden, kind of, you learn more about yourself and you kind of outgrow them.
Yes. Been there.
Yeah, and I don't think that not that that's bad, but I think we change and we evolve. And when you talk about understanding, um, it's just I think it's so um, to me it's a sign of I want to say wisdom and so at least for me it was a like an age thing where I think when I was younger, I had this assumption that people understood me, like even people you live with. Like, why do they do that? But they because they know me and they know I don't like that. Or if they understood me, they wouldn't, they understand me, so they shouldn't do that. And then then you realize that nobody is you. So they really can't understand you. One, unless you share, like unless you can articulate it and and even then, because they haven't had that experience, like you've had that experience. But those expectations that someone understands you is is an interesting place to be. There's a wonderful interview I saw a number of years ago with Alain de Botton and Krista Tippett from Being about relationships and he was talking about understanding and everything. He says that if he meets a young couple and they say, well, they totally understand me, he always says, it's not going to work. So it just made me laugh because I think my first few like romantic relationships, like that's what I felt. It was like, oh, they totally get me. And then I was just like, and now I'm divorced. So, so I
That's all
guess
right.
not, you know?
It's yeah, because as we've learned that it's not possible to fully know anyone, even if they do share a lot of themselves. There's still parts that we keep to ourselves, which is okay because that's another part about having the seat at our own table and the thing is about setting clear, having a clear sense of boundaries too, because sometimes. Sometimes we, well, not sometimes we do need that space, and so by establishing the boundaries, um, it protects our own well-being too. And I don't mean, what is it? Boundaries, not walls. So it's like you don't want the walls to keep everybody out forever. You want to share parts of yourself. Obviously, that would be the best case scenario when you're building outside community, but within building a community within yourself, relearning who and what you are and what you stand for and what's, key to your being. You need to have clear boundaries. Because boy, oh boy, do we know in life that people will walk straight through when we least expect it often.
Yes, they will because everybody, I mean, even if it's, from I mean, people have their own agendas and not in a bad way, but, people have their own agendas, their own ideas. They come with their own story, their own fears, which they then kind of place on us.
Yes.
And, not necessarily, and sometimes it can be, parents who kind of place their own fears on, growing up, as far as like, don't do that in trying to protect their children
Hmm.
or the people they care for, or it could be, someone who, has a particular goal or purpose and they don't honor those boundaries because they are trying to get somewhere. And I think it is, like you said, really important, like to sit at your own table because, you know, it's, I mean, you are the longest relationship you will have with anyone is with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know why why it came to me when you were saying about, I guess boundary setting, and I was thinking about picturing at the table. I laugh because there's a friend of mine that no matter where we are, if we're somewhere and there happens to be French fries with dinner or something on my dinner but not on hers, um she gladly takes some off of my plate.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? And then there are times like, you could be with my brother, and my brother used to like finish, like would take everybody's plate when they were done and finish everything on it. He was like
Oh,
this
that sounds
human.
like my brother. My
He
goodness.
was like, he
Especially
was
in
like
his teenage years.
yeah, exactly. Teenage and 20s. It was like, oh
Hmm.
my gosh. It was like, oh my God. Yeah.
Little
Al, French
French fries,
fry.
Al.
You're on a roll today, Al. Feel free to share.
Yeah, interesting. What you're talking about, having the seat. So the seat on the table is so important. It comes to it's part of like the four functions of behavior, right? So the S stands for the sensory. So when we are seated at the table, so our sensory gets we see what we see, we hear what we hear, and we smell what we smell within that particular table where we are seated on. And it's so automatic, that we just uh, it comes to the like when we escape to a single corner where we are seated at, so S is for escape, so like what you were saying earlier on, you just get out of the community, if you feel that it's not the right community for you, or the whatever the networking event, or what Jen you're saying, so just avoidance, just if you think that they are not within your particular zone of comfort, just move out there, so it's the same, then it comes to the A. A is the attention, and the awareness. So when when we sit on the table, we're alone ourselves, So we focus so much on our own awareness and attention within it. It seems like a kid, when they're being seated at a corner, I mean the parents punish them for their wrongdoings or being naughty, Then they just put them in a corner and then they have to be aware of him or herself. And then when it comes to the tea, it's a tangible. So it's like imagine the kid is holding a lollipop and enjoying him or herself, the child, or even adult, enjoying the lollipop. But it's so like a tangible given to them. And then just enjoy it. Or even the ice cream when you sit on the table and loving it. Yeah. So yeah, Jen's coming out with all these emojis, And yeah, it's good, this way. So it's yeah, it's a good topic this week. I got something to talk about, like sitting arrangement. And when you seated there, so the tea, the last tea will be we gives us the tranquility, within within our own self, So it's like a self awareness, self care, and self love. I mean, you're just sitting there and then just understanding the environment around, right? And then you like both of you are doing journaling, so you also sit on the table. So it's basically, yeah, this is the great topic for this week. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Al. When you were talking, and first of all, I love like some of, seed, and there's always pop the meaning into the chat today.
Sure,
But
sure. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about like just the fact of like taking a seat at the table, like where we sit at the table, and how uh I know that when I grew up, and even still, like, my father had his seat, and no one sat in that seat. Like my parents had, like, it's out of respect. It's kind of like that was dad's seat. And even now, like my mother, my mother would never sit on where he sat. Um, it's just such an interesting idea that, we have a seat at the table. And years ago, I love Patrick Stewart, Star Trek fame. And years ago, I saw him do a one-man show of A Christmas Carol. And he did on Broadway, and he did all the characters. So it was amazing. And he jumped from place to place, like at the table or in the roles, with the different voices and everything. It was wonderful. And it was just like, as you were saying, I think that, when we come to our own table, we come with all the parts of ourselves. Like we come with all the characters. And on any given day, we kind of take the seat of a part, like of a quality of ourselves, of a characteristic of who we are. Um, and I think it's almost like our job, like the visual to me, it's almost like like is to give each aspect a voice, to allow each, like to sit in each place and see what it feels like to take on that role. Like, what is the role of, like, like the wise, and what is, like, what is the role of another quality that you have, the funny or the silly, um the quiet or the loud, like to actually play those roles. And when we sit in quiet or meditation or journal or whatever we do or whatever practice we have, we give all those aspects a voice at the table. Mm. So yeah, that's what I was thinking about. It reminded me of, if anybody's ever been at a Seder, for Passover.
I
Yeah,
have.
yes, I figured you had, Mary Jane. Um, but there are the four. They have in the story, or in the what you read, at the Seder, there's the four sons,
Mm.
and it gives you sort of like what they are. One is kind of naive, and the other is the wise one, and another one is, I mean, they call it the evil one, but I would think is probably like the sarcastic, the questioning, one, and so they talk about those, like how you would answer different things depending on who you're speaking to. And so, but it's just that you give, like, but they also have, each one is represented, right? So it's not like they're saying, oh, okay, well, this is the right way to be, and we only want the wise one to be at the table. They give, all of them are represented.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's just like I always like that part because in the Seder, because often it's kids are asked to participate in the Seder and play the role of the children. And I love the one that doesn't know how to ask, because
Hmm.
sometimes often I am that child that doesn't know how to ask. Sometimes it's not just asking of other people, asking myself, what it is that I need. What is it that I need to take a seat at the table?
I mean, I absolutely love that because I don't think we necessarily know sometimes what we need. Like,
Hmm.
what do we need to take a seat at our own table? And then also those questions of, like, how do I feel about this? What do I think about this? Sometimes we don't have an answer and we just know. It's kind of like, I don't know what, like why, but this just doesn't feel right to me.
Yes.
But in other times we can identify right away. Um, we can identify right away what doesn't resonate with us, what energy is kind of being perpetuated. And we're like, we'll say it just feels icky. It just doesn't feel right.
Yes.
And we know that. And but it's to allow ourselves that opportunity, to either be able to ask ourselves the question and sometimes not be able to ask ourselves, like not even have a question. Like we just don't even know. And that's okay
Absolutely.
too.
That's why I can relate to that child.
Yes,
I
yes, I
am
think
that
we all
child.
can. Yeah, I think sometimes we're all that child,
Yes.
you know.
I do too. At least I recognize it in myself, right?
Well, yeah, and I think that, when we're at especially when we're around other people. I think, it's very common, I think, we all travel in our own kind of world, whatever, worlds or whatever, and in our own communities, our own families, and there's almost like a lingo that happens. It's a language that's spoken. And I think sometimes, we're in a group where people are speaking a language and we don't understand like what they mean or what they're saying.
Hmm.
And we don't want to like we don't like to feel stupid, so we're not going to ask because we don't want to look like we don't understand. It's kind of like I don't want to ask what this means because I don't want to like appear stupid
Foolish
or
or
foolish,
foolish.
exactly, or foolish. Yeah, exactly. And so we kind of just shut down or we squash what we feel or, our opinions because, you know, we're not going to be that one to
Hmm.
voice that we're not following something.
Exactly. I think I shared this with you, Jan, with one of the courses. Oh, well, multiple courses. It's a thing now when I've taken online courses, and it's interesting because you're taking thing and the professor might be explaining something, and I may grasp certain pieces of it, but there's elements of things where I'm thinking I don't quite understand it. And I've gotten past the part of that of not asking the question because I'm like, well, who's suffering if I don't understand? The prof obviously understands, and I've had a few of them say to me, "Thank you for asking the question because I'm sure you're not the only one wondering." Because it's
Mhm.
true, right? But it's like somebody has to be the one that asks the question. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm gonna look foolish, well, whatever. Like I've gotten to that point. But a lot of people in the class will be saying in the comments or in the chat or saying, "Thank you for asking that question because I wasn't quite clear on that too." But I'm thinking, well, why was I the only one asking the question? But, I can be that representative of you know, as one prof says, if you're asking the question, you're one person, but there's probably 10 others wondering the very same thing. So,
But I think it's a true testament to being comfortable with yourself
yes.
and, having been on both ends where I ask the question and where I don't feel comfortable depending on the situation and I don't
Hmm.
ask.
Yes.
And yes, it is only hurting me, but I think you have to have a certain comfort level to be
Yes.
able to be able to ask. And I think the same thing applies for yourself. I think you have to have a certain comfort level within yourself to ask those challenging questions. Um, to sit there and question, you reacted a particular way, in a situation to actually question yourself and kind of discover or get curious about why you acted that way.
Hmm.
And I think you have to be comfortable to a certain extent with the fact that, you have a lot of stories going on up there.
Oh boy, do I ever.
Yeah, I know. I have a whole novel, a whole encyclopedia happening up there.
Maybe it's time to write I should write my own book. Hey, Jan.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, but there's that whole encyclopedia going on up there. And so, um, but I think that that's what I think we have to be comfortable enough to be able to even ask ourselves those challenging things. And then we have to you talked about compassion and kindness to yourself, Mary Jane. And then you have to be compassionate and kind enough to yourself when you kind of figure it out and
Hmm.
you realize, why you've been responding or reacting in a particular way. And you're
Yes.
like, and you get the answers that, you're like, oh, it's like, when you realize that whatever the situation is like, and what your behavior was going forward. Like what happened as subsequent response to that. Not only how you felt, but what is your mode of behavior based on whatever that is?
Yes.
Y- and I think you learn about that and you're like, oh, okay, I understand that about myself. I understand, you know, that comes from a childhood wound or this ability that I didn't want to get hurt again. Um, like all you need to do is you're made to feel stupid one time.
Hmm.
I was talking to somebody recently and they were talking about the fact that when they were in school, I guess like a young kid, like, when he was a, or she, I don't, when he or she was a young child, the teacher calling them out because they didn't know something. And like all the kids laughed.
Hmm.
And ever since then, won't question it, like would not ask a question.
Yes.
And now they're whatever, they're 40, 50, whatever years old and still won't ask a question because that was so like devastating to them, the fact that they felt so stupid. And they were like probably less than the age of 10
Oh,
when
wow.
that happened. But how things like that can stay with you. And then you have a choice later on, if like you kind of understand it, you're like, oh, now I understand where that came from, why I respond that way.
Yes. Well, that's why it's important to take, right? Like to take your seat at your own table
Exactly.
because we need to reflect on those things. Because really that's the only time healing begins because yes, it's interesting how so many things like that, like you're saying somebody under the age of 10. I mean, this is a trauma. This is a trauma that somebody else is inflicting on another and often it's people in authority that will do that and it's authority over a child at least. And just really it's just it always blows my mind how people think that that is in some way productive, um, in informing better communication, because it's definitely not encouraging, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just because, yeah, I mean, I think that it is interesting how things like that can reflect and I think when you look at children in general, when you look at the behavior a lot of times that they have, you realize that I mean, that it's not coming, whatever they do is not coming from them.
Hmm.
It's either because someone said something or that's the way they're watching the adults in the room and they're following what they do. Um, it's always my cousin is a director of a school for children with special needs. And she said it's always interesting to um, when you go out and you're with children, um, that the way they're the way people treat them and the way other kids treat them and the behavior of other people toward them and just it's just usually a big snapshot into what they've been exposed to and what they've been taught. And I think some of what we're talking about is like, you know what are we taught
Yes.
when we're young,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
what are we taught about ourselves, and you know
Yes, and it's really about now. It's about now that we have the opportunity to come back and reflect back ourselves and determining for ourselves who and what we are. Not not you know, not letting somebody steal your fries from your plate.
I love that image. You can just see it now.
It's
The
okay.
across the
I
table.
willingly let her have them because she loves them so much. So, but it's just funny. Just the image of that of that is just funny. But yeah, I love that. What a beautiful conversation today, Jan. It is so important that we take that moment and take you know, a seat at our own table and really just, reflect back on, what makes us who we are. Not the surface us, but the real authentic being that's inside.
Absolutely. And just that image of like, I feel like we're all at our own table here and
Hmm.
sitting at our own table, but yet together.
Sitting at a little cafe all together, as I was mentioning
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, all of a sudden that image came to mind. It's like each individual table and not necessarily sharing a table, but each one of us being able to, that's to me this space, we each have our own table.
Yes, and for some reason, when I said that about a cafe with all sitting at our own little table, for some reason I had visions of little outside cafe in Paris. So there you go. So maybe that's where we're meant to meet.
Yeah, that's right. I actually had the same image. I thought of a little, like
It's very common there, right? So
yes, yes, it is. But yeah, it's just like it's how many because I think these are you used the word earlier, Mary Jane, the word sacred, because I think spaces like these
Mhm.
are sacred.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because we ourselves are sacred beings, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
oh, what a beautiful conversation, Jen.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it was. Absolutely.
It's it's lovely. So it's just like I feel very calm and peaceful. I needed this conversation today. I missed being here last week as well. And not that I wasn't busy doing a million other things, but hey.
I know I also needed it. I also needed it.
Yes,
So should we move into our meditation for today, Mary Jane?
I think it might be a good idea.
Okie dokie. So, the focus for me for this meditation was meeting difference with strength. So, being able to stand in who you are with strength and not feel threatened. And I think because of the times we're now in. And so this was really has been very much on my mind this week and in my heart. So, begin by finding a comfortable seated position. Allow your spine to be upright yet relaxed. Let your shoulders soften. Your hands rest easily on your lap or just wherever they feel comfortable. Gently close your eyes or lower your gaze. Bring your attention to your breath, noticing the natural rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. Nothing to change, simply observing. Now bring your awareness to your chest or any place where you feel your strength lies, a place where breath, feeling, and presence meet. Sense this area as a place of steadiness, a place of quiet strength, a place where you belong to yourself. Take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. With each breath, feel yourself settling more fully into your own seat, your place of inner grounding, a place of dignity. There's no need to prove who you are here, no need to defend or explain, just to be. Imagine what it feels like to sit with clarity inside yourself, even while the world around you holds many different voices, many different beliefs, many different ways of seeing. Notice that you can remain rooted in who you are while allowing others to be who they are. Strength does not have to be loud. Strength can be calm. Strength can be patient, can be spacious. Strength can listen without losing itself. As you so As you breathe, silently repeat these affirmations, allowing each one to settle. I am safe in my own knowing. I can honor myself while respecting difference. My strength is calm and clear. I belong to myself. I take my seat with dignity and peace. Let these words become more than thoughts. Let them become a felt experience in your body. If you notice any tension, any tightening around the idea of difference or disagreement, invite the breath there. Not to push it away, but to soften it. Feel the steadiness beneath you, the support of simply being present. You may begin to sense that meeting difference with strength does not require armor. It requires presence. It requires self trust. It requires remembering who you are. Now imagine carrying this grounded presence with you into your next conversation. Could be a conversation with family, a community, with someone who may see the world differently than you do. See yourself listening with clarity, speaking with integrity, standing in your truth without hardness, holding space without shrinking. Let this sense of calm strength extend outward into your relationships, into your daily encounters, into the wider world. Take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. And as you return, carry this with you, the sense of belonging within yourself, a strength that is calm and clear, a seat at your own table. Remember, you are rooted, you are present, you belong to yourself. And when you're ready, feel free to let your eyes open, take in your surroundings.
Thank you, Jen. That was beautiful. I feel very calm, somewhat serene at the moment.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
I I'd like to share the poem that you wrote, Jen. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So, as mentioned, it is by Jen. It's called Fog, and she has a from her from I guess from your book Simply Belonging. It's upcoming, right, Jan?
Yep. Yep.
So, Fog, it drifts in silence, a veil of breath from the unseen, soft, unmeasured, settling over field and stone. The world disappears, yet nothing is lost. It is held, cradled in a hushed embrace, as if the divine has lowered a blanket of stillness, a gentle shield against the clamor beyond. And within this pale cocoon, I feel my edges soften. I belong to this quiet, to the curve of the earth hidden beneath, to the rhythm of my own breath, a reminder that even unseen, I am part of everything. Then quietly, the sun presses forward, a golden whisper threading through the gray. Light spills across the hidden earth, not tearing the fog away, but weaving with it, reminding us that in mystery and in clarity, we belong to ourselves, to one another, to this vast and tender world. Beautiful poem, Jan. Thank you for allowing us to share it with you.
Mm. Thank you, Mary Jane. So, thank you, everyone, so much for being here today. We really appreciate your presence, your energy, um, the just the space you hold, the seat you take um, in our community. Feel free to join us for next week, next Friday. And we have an upcoming workshop on May 4th, March. We're in March.
March
March
14th.
March 14th, a week from tomorrow,
Yes,
at 2 p.m. And by then it's Eastern Daylight Time because we changed the clocks, I think.
that's right, this weekend.
So feel free to join us for that in the afternoon. Should be a lot of fun. We have our last session, which is the integration of all, like the three of us, Darlene, Mary Jane, and myself, for our last Wednesday session, which is this week on the 11th. Feel free to share the YouTube video if you feel so inclined, and if you think it might resonate with someone. And have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful week ahead if we don't speak to you, even though we would love to do that, but understood.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a blessed weekend ahead, everyone. And we look forward to sharing space with you again next week.
Yep, lots of love, everybody.